Hi, my name's Hans, and today I'll be presenting to you what myths see when they see God. Basically, my presentation is just going to be about Theophany myths. So what is a Theophany? Theophany is the visible manifestation to humankind of God or a God. We will be exploring 3 different Theophany myths from 3 different time periods and cultures, analyzing the more negative interactions they've had with their Theophanies, because I think there's more symbolism to crank through. And I also am just doing that to point out that not all Theophanies are negative. Yeah. Okay, so first off, we'll start with ancient Greece, Semele and Zeus. Semele was a mortal who sacrificed a bull for Zeus at his altar, and he was so impressed with her that he descended as a Theophany, and they fell in love. They had an affair, and they met many times until Semele became pregnant. When Hera discovered what was going on, she descended to Greece and as a Theophany herself, and convinced Semele that Zeus was not the god he said he was, but was just a guy named Zeus. And she did this to the point where she convinced Semele. Next time Semele saw Zeus, she told him that she needed him to grant her one wish, and that she needed him to, swear by the river Styx. And once Zeus did that, she told him that she wanted to see his god form. And Zeus, having already agreed on the river Styx, was now forced to show her his god form, and when he did, it was this giant being of lightning that burned her to death. So, before she died, Zeus grabbed the unborn baby out of her womb and sewed it into his thigh, where it would stay for the rest of the 9 months, and then was born the god Dionysus. Oh no. I'm sorry. And this is a very intriguing backstory for Dionysus. And Dionysus went to the underworld afterwards and found his mom there and brought her to Mount Olympus, where she became the god Theophany. And also Hera cursed Dionysus with madness when he was like a full-fledged adult. And yeah, there's a lot of symbolism to grab at that. Oh, and Theophany, Semele's goddess name, is Latin translated from inspire frenzy. So there's a lot of symbolism to grab at that the way she lived and the affair she had even came into her abilities as a god. So, what does this myth mean? Is it a warning narrative about affairs, especially with people in a different class level? Is it a cautionary tale of a jealous wife with more power than the mistress? This is a story where there's really no good people. They're all doing bad things. And these gods represent aspects of Greek people. The Greek gods have so many stories where they make love and reproduce with the Greek people that they very much represent aspects of the Greek people in general. And this is one of the few myths where a mortal becomes a god, but it is one of the many where they are a parental figure. And the offspring was Dionysus, who was cursed to be insane by jealous Hera when he was an adult. So this could have a theme of alcoholism and madness connected to selfish unbridled passion. And on to a more serious note, we're going to go to Lovecraftian stuff. Lovecraftian is basically all Theophanies, and it's a very different aspect. Whereas Greek represented the people, he represents gods that are the exact opposite of people. So this is a very short synopsis of a very long, complicated story, but let's get into it. So it starts with one scholar who finds an account of a mysterious green statue, and the green statue is important because it's made from a rock that they've never seen before. So he talks to the man who found it, and the man who found it was a sheriff searching for a missing couple, and found their bodies dismembered and used for a summoning ritual with a statue at the center. They interrogate the worshippers and follow a trail of accounts that tell of a group of sailors who found the abandoned island city of Arlaia, where the statue is said to live, the figure in the statue. So basically we have an account of people all over the world coming into contact with this Cthulhu statue or nightmares of Cthulhu, and then a majority of them go insane afterwards. So they explore the city and find a tower where Cthulhu is sleeping, and by accident they wake him up, and the Cyclopean god chases them out of the city. and they get into a boat and try to flee, and Cthulhu follows them into the water until he is up to his head, and then they ram the boat into his head, and it does collapse a part of his skull, but it instantly starts regenerating and healing itself back together. Basically, how do you handle a god who can't be killed with material weapons? And the scholar, knowing that this god and his cult is still alive across the world, makes him slowly begin to question his insanity when he knows full well that everyone else who's come into contact with Cthulhu is mad. And this is a picture of Cthulhu. He has the tentacles for the face, human torso, wings of a dragon, legs of a lion, and I believe that's all of the symbolism of Cthulhu. So, one good thing we can do with this is we can analyze the writer to see where they got the inspiration from. H.P. Lovecraft and his context and his life. Lovecraft was born in Rhode Island in 1890. His father died in a mental institution when he was 8, but his mind was... he was actively going insane from a mental illness 6 years prior to that, and nobody told H.P. Lovecraft. They told him he felt this way because he was overworked. He had a very negative relationship with his mother. He was pulled out of elementary school the year his father died. And he came from a very rich and affluent family. But in 1904, when his grandfather died, there was problems in the will's paperwork, so he and his mother lost a huge portion of their wealth. And this was also the same year that he tried to go to high school but had a nervous breakdown and just dropped out completely. He is completely self-taught. That's a bad way to put it. Like, he learned from reading on his own terms. His mother died when he was 31 in the same mental institute as his father and the same exact way his father did, which inspired Arkham City in his stories. He was known to exploit female writers and very racist and anti-Semitic, so this is not a writer to look up to by any means, but he did have very interesting stories that have given us Theophanies that we've just never really seen before. And he did marry Sonia Green, who was a Jewish woman, so very strange that they became a couple together. When they would go to New York, he would harass Jewish immigrants to walk in the street so that he didn't have to share the sidewalk with him. And she would be like, "Hey man, I'm a Jewish immigrant. Do you mind cooling it?" And he would just like look right past it and just not even pretend that that was a part of who she was. And they only stayed together for 2 years, so obviously it wasn't a very healthy marriage. What does this Theophany mean? So we have some quotes from H.P. Lovecraft, which gives us a good basis to go on. He says, "All of my tales are based on the fundamental premise that common human laws and emotions have no validity or significance in the cosmos at large," which tells you a lot of what he's trying to do with his works. And he also has another quote that says, "To know the world is to be destroyed by the world." So 2 very interesting symbolisms for 2 different ways of looking at it. So basically, it's just a very nihilistic cosmic horror, an idea that the human race could be completely pointless and that everything we're doing has no point to the grander scheme of things, that we literally are just unimportant to it all. And it is also based on the idea of, well, what if there are gods? What if there are gods out there, but they view us as nothing but insects and care nothing for what we do, what we suffer from, what we grow from? And like fairies, it capitalizes on the vastness of the universe and how little we know of what could be out there and what could be waiting for us. And if we did understand, it would drive us to insanity to know how small we really are. And he also had a fear of globalization that comes through in his racist undertones throughout his narrative. Now, on to an early 2000s video game, Final Fantasy and Sin. This is another story that is very complicated, so to dumb it down, I am just going to tell you one aspect of the story that I think tells you all of the symbolism I will be focusing on. So Yuna, she's in the GIF right here, is a priest who must go on a pilgrimage to save her people from the calamitous monster god Sin, who will be resurrected every so often. They basically have this giant god monster who destroys cities all at once, and it is all based on the agreement that he can be killed, but the monster comes back every 10 years. So you can kill him and save people, but not for long. And her responsibilities as a summoner include going to temples and achieving aeons, spirits, which are deities she can summon for battle, and she also does rituals for passing spirits onto the dead, onto heaven, or else they become monsters. So she gets aeons so that she can fight sin, and then her second responsibility is passing the dead onto heaven. This scene right here is one explanation of it. She goes to Kilikaport, which is an island that was just destroyed by sin, and under her you can see the sarcophaguses with the flowers on it that are floating in the water, and she walks on the water and does a ritual where she passes the souls onto the afterlife, which are these spears right here. These spheres. Cool. Her pilgrimage must end in her death. So the end of it, every summoner who does kill sin, they always die with him. She does discover at the very end of the video game that her religion is built on controlling people with the idea of sin rather than sin itself. So basically, these priests have had a way to kill sin this whole time, but they didn't want to do it because it would relinquish the power, and it would also not keep the people in check. So she can defeat sin permanently, but only if she sacrifices her religion and not herself. So there's many plot twists in the game, but one big one is that she discovers that the aeons she's been getting from all of these temples are actually spirits of people who were killed by sin in the first city that sin killed. So her second job as summoner is to pass on spirits onto the dead, but she's using spirits that she is forcibly keeping from passing on to the afterlife, which is a hypocrisy within the religion of the Yuyavon in and of itself. And this story also has roots to Greek mythology, but we'll get to that in a second. Final Fantasy X context. This game was important for the first use of its highest graphic account. It had the best graphics for cinematic cutscenes in the series thus far. It had 3D environments instead of 2D, and the first time the series used voice actors. Final Fantasy X was the first in the series to take inspiration solely from Asian cultures, specifically Southeast Pacific Asia, Japan, and Thailand, rather than its Eurocentric fantasy sci-fi predecessors. And this is why I have these two GIFs to compare the architecture and the environment. In this one, you have Asian architecture, you have more, I don't know what to call the scenery other than just Japan, kind of environment. And then in this one, you have Final Fantasy VII, which obviously has very European architecture, and the environment is very European in and of itself. This is the main city. This is the first city that you go to in Final Fantasy VII. Wait, that's not right. It's the city the main characters are from, and then this is just them traveling around. So the Greek mythology roots is that this character, Titus, finds out in one of the so many plot twists that his father is sin. His father's spirit has been reincarnated to help aid sin and become sin in and of itself. So, a lot of symbolism there. So, what is this Theophany saying? This is the whale monster god, Sin. The people's relationship with the god Sin is tenuous at best. It is an agreement that their ancestors were bad people, and they are to participate in that cultural guilt and be punished indefinitely for it, and the acceptance of that. The god represents fear of technology and humanity without an ingrained moral code. Him targeting cities that utilize too much machina, too much technology, and yeah. So it's a fear that if people get too advanced and don't need God, that they would have to become bad people. Oh my gosh, this is just a mess. I'm really sorry, guys. So, and then the next part is all the spirits in the religion are lost souls of civilians, including Titus's dad, and a theme of man-made religions and what to do when they become sour. This is my presentation. Thanks for your time. Sorry it was a mess. And this is my bibliography.